Her laughter had that kind of warmth that could make walls forget they were meant to echo. I wasn't supposed to be there that late, not after everyone had left, but the sound of her laugh, soft, low, and real, made it impossible to walk away. She stood by the kitchen counter, the dim golden light tracing the edges of her hair, her shoulders, the gentle movement of her hand around a glass of wine. 40, maybe a little more. Graceful, composed. The kind of woman who'd learned how to hide her exhaustion behind poise. I was 24, still trying to understand what quiet confidence looked like, and that night it looked like her. "Still here?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. Her voice carried that teasing calm that made it hard to tell whether she was amused or testing me. "Guess I lost track of time." She smiled, just enough to show she knew I was lying. "That's dangerous," she said. "Getting lost in time." I leaned against the counter across from her, pretending to focus on the empty plates, the faint hum of the refrigerator, anything but her. The room smelled like red wine and jasmine, her perfume, faint but everywhere. She moved closer to put the wine away, and her sleeve brushed against my arm. Just fabric against skin, but it left a trail that felt warmer than it should have. "Did you enjoy the evening?" she asked. "I did." My voice came out lower than I expected. "Mostly the part after everyone left." She paused. That was the first time the air changed, heavier, slower. Her hand rested on the counter between us, fingers tapping lightly as if to fill the silence. "You're too young to say things like that," she murmured. "Too young to mean them?" She looked at me then. Really looked. There was a tiny flicker in her eyes, something between warning and wanting. "Maybe just too honest." We stood there, a step apart, both pretending the distance meant nothing. The clock ticked somewhere behind her. Her laughter had faded, and now every sound in the house felt too loud, the hum of the lights, the faint clink of her bracelet when she moved, the way my own heartbeat seemed to betray me. I should have walked away. I knew it, she knew it. But neither of us moved. She took a slow breath, the kind people take when they're steadying themselves. "You should go," she said softly. But her hand stayed on the counter, still, close enough that I could feel its warmth. "Do you want me to?" I asked. Her eyes met mine again. That calm, unreadable look was gone. What replaced it was something fragile, like a secret she'd been keeping for years. She shook her head once, almost imperceptibly, and then smiled to cover it up. "You ask too many questions? Only the ones you don't want to answer." The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was charged, trembling between us. Her lips parted slightly, maybe to say something, maybe not. I wasn't sure anymore if it was me leaning forward or her moving closer. Then a sound, sharp, sudden, the front door creaked open. We froze. Her hand slipped away, her face shifting back into composure as footsteps echoed down the hall. And just before someone called her name from the doorway, she looked at me, one last glance, raw and unguarded, and whispered, barely audible, "This never happened." But her eyes told me otherwise. To be continued. The next few days were quieter than they should have been. I tried to convince myself that what happened, or almost happened, meant nothing. But her silence said more than any conversation could. When she finally called, it wasn't about that night. It was about a project. "Just come by for a bit," she said. Her tone was casual, but there was a hesitation tucked between her words. When I arrived, she was sitting near the window, hair tied loosely, glasses balanced on her nose. Not the composed woman from before, this was someone unguarded, softer somehow. Papers scattered across the table, a half-empty cup of tea next to her, steam long gone. "You didn't have to come," she said, glancing up. "I wanted to," I replied. That made her pause, just for a second, before she gestured to the seat beside her. "Then sit. Help me make sense of this mess." Our shoulders almost touched. Every time she leaned closer to show me something, her perfume wrapped around me again, familiar now, almost addictive. She explained things in her patient, deliberate way, her fingers brushing the paper, mine hovering just close enough to feel her warmth. At one point, she sighed and leaned back, rubbing her temples. "I used to be good at this," she murmured. "Before everything." I didn't ask what everything meant. I didn't have to. The tiredness in her voice filled in the blanks. A failed marriage. Loneliness disguised as independence. The quiet ache of being admired but not truly seen. "You still are," I said softly. She laughed under her breath, not like before, not free, but careful. "You say that like you know me." "Maybe I do." Her eyes found mine, and for a moment, there was no room for pretending. She looked away first, her hand reaching for the tea, but she misjudged, and I caught the cup before it spilled. My fingers grazed hers. Neither of us moved. Her skin was warm, the contact small but sharp, like electricity disguised as calm. She didn't pull away, not immediately. Just looked at our hands, then up at me, her expression unreadable. "I don't think this is a good idea," she said, but her voice wavered. "I know." She stood then, pacing a little, crossing her arms, the distance between us growing, but the tension only tightening. "You don't understand," she said, shaking her head. "People talk. They always do. I've seen what happens when they do. I'm not people." That made her stop. The words hung in the air, too heavy, too honest. She looked at me again, that same flicker in her eyes as the first night, the one she tried to hide behind humor, behind control. "You really shouldn't look at me like that," she whispered. "Then stop standing that close," I murmured back. She laughed again, quiet, uncertain, and stepped closer anyway. The air between us thinned, her breath brushing against my neck as she reached past me to grab something from the shelf. But she didn't move away right after. Our eyes met, her lips parted slightly, the kind of almost smile that feels like surrender. And in that fragile second, where everything felt like it could break, she whispered, "The next day, everything felt heavier, the air, the silence, even the way she said my name. We were supposed to meet at her place to finish the project. Nothing more. Nothing less." When I walked in, she was already there, hair down this time, a soft sweater hanging off one shoulder, bare feet on the wooden floor. She greeted me with a small nod, no words, no smile. The kind of quiet that said too much. We sat side by side again, our focus slipping every few minutes. The sound of her breathing, the faint hum of the ceiling fan, the smell of her perfume, everything was too close, too familiar. I caught her watching me once. She didn't look away immediately. "What?" I asked, half smiling, pretending it didn't make my chest tighten. "Nothing," she said quickly, eyes dropping to the page. "You just remind me of someone." "Someone good?" Her lips curved, faint and distant. "Someone I shouldn't have cared about." Before I could reply, her phone buzzed across the table. A message preview flashed, a name I didn't recognize. She hesitated before flipping it over, face tightening for a second. "You can answer," I said. "It's fine." Her tone was sharp, final. We went back to pretending to work, but the moment had already cracked open something between us. The tension wasn't just attraction anymore, it was awareness, heavy and alive. Her pen rolled toward me. I reached for it at the same time she did. Our hands collided, and this time neither of us pulled back. "Careful," I said, though my voice came out lower than I meant. "I am," she whispered. The room felt too small then. Too quiet. The kind of silence that presses against your skin. She looked at me, really looked. I could see the question in her eyes, the one neither of us had dared to ask out loud. "What are we doing?" she breathed. "I don't know," I said. "But I don't want to stop." She laughed softly, shaky. "You say that now. I mean it." Her gaze dropped to my lips for half a heartbeat, enough to make me forget where I was. And then, a knock. Both of us froze. She stood so fast the chair scraped the floor. "Stay quiet," she mouthed, glancing toward the door. A man's voice called her name, friendly, too familiar. "You home?" My heart thudded in my chest. She didn't answer right away. Then, calm as ever, she called back. "Give me a minute!" Footsteps retreated down the hall. The door didn't open, but the spell had broken, or maybe it had deepened. When she turned back to me, her face was pale, breathing uneven. "You need to go," she whispered. I nodded, but I didn't move. "Please," she said again, softer this time. And then, without meaning to, I reached up, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. She closed her eyes for half a second. Just half a second, but it was enough. When she opened them, her voice was barely a sound. "If you don't leave now." I stepped closer. "I know." Our faces were inches apart, her breath warm, her pulse visible just beneath her throat. We didn't kiss. But everything in that silence said we already had. That night, the rain came without warning, heavy, relentless, filling every quiet space with sound. I hadn't planned to see her again so soon. But when she called and said, "Can you bring the folder I left behind?" I knew it wasn't really about the folder. When I arrived, she was standing by the window, watching the downpour. Her sweater hung loose, sleeves pushed to her elbows, the soft lamplight tracing the curve of her neck. She didn't turn when I walked in. "You didn't have to come this late," she said. "I couldn't sleep." She looked over her shoulder then, eyes tired but warm. Neither could I. For a moment neither of us spoke. The rain was louder now, drumming against the glass like a heartbeat we both tried to ignore. I placed the folder on the table. "Here." She smiled faintly. "You're always careful. Always keeping things proper." There was something in her tone that made me step closer. "Is that what you want?" She finally faced me, slow, deliberate. "I don't know what I want anymore." Her voice cracked a little, the kind of sound that comes from holding too much in for too long. I moved closer, stopping just a breath away. "Then tell me what you don't want." Her eyes searched mine, and for the first time, she didn't look away. "I don't want to be afraid of this." The space between us disappeared. Her hand brushed against mine, tentative at first, then firmer, like she was testing how real this moment was. I reached up, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. My fingertips grazed her skin, warm, trembling. She exhaled sharply, almost a gasp. "You shouldn't," she whispered. "I know." Her hand rested on my chest, not to push me away, but to feel how fast my heart was beating. "This is wrong," she said, though her body didn't move. "Then stop me." She didn't. The thunder outside rolled low and distant. Her eyes flicked to my lips, then back to my face. The air between us thickened, heavy with every word we hadn't said. I could smell her perfume, faint, floral, familiar, and it made everything inside me ache. She took one step closer. "You don't know what this will cost." "Maybe not," I said softly. "But I know what it costs to keep pretending." Her breath hitched. "Don't say that." "Why not?" "Because if you do, I won't stop you." The confession hung between us, fragile, dangerous, and too late to take back. Lightning flashed, illuminating her face, eyes wide, lips parted, caught between fear and want. For a second, we both leaned in, drawn by something neither of us could name. Her hand slid up my arm, fingers brushing the back of my neck. My hand found her waist, the warmth of her skin burning through thin fabric. We were so close I could taste the rain in the air, her breath against my mouth, then a sound. A knock. Sharp. Jarring. Real. Her eyes flew open, heart racing under my palm. We froze, inches apart, suspended between what could happen and what shouldn't. And then she whispered, barely audible, "Don't move." The knock came again, harder this time. She stepped back, breath shallow, eyes darting toward the door. My pulse still thundered in my ears. "It's fine," she whispered, though her voice trembled. "It's probably just." But when she opened the door, her sister stood there, rain dripping from her coat. Her gaze swept the room, and then to me. "I figured you'd be here," she said quietly. Silence. Heavy, accusing, electric. I came to return your book, the sister continued, setting it on the table. Her eyes flicked between us, reading every unspoken thing. But looks like I interrupted something. She didn't answer. She didn't even breathe. After a long pause, the sister sighed. You always said you'd never do this again. Stop, she said sharply, softer than anger, but just as fragile. You don't understand. I understand enough, her sister murmured. You promised after, don't. She cut in, her voice cracking. The sister turned to leave, glancing at me one last time. Be careful. She's not the one who ends up hurt. The door closed, the sound echoing through the room like a final warning. I turned to her. She was still facing the door, hands clenched, shoulders trembling. What did she mean? I asked quietly. Her answer came after a long pause, a whisper that felt like it had been waiting years to escape. I've done this before, she said. Someone younger. It ended badly. I thought I'd learned. The words hit hard, not because of the past, but because of how much it cost her to admit it. Why tell me now? Because, she said, turning toward me, eyes glassy but fierce. I didn't expect you to matter. The air between us changed, no longer innocent, no longer uncertain. It was real now. Messy. Dangerous. I took a slow step closer. And now? She didn't move away this time. Now I can't undo it. Her hands trembled as she brushed past me, picking up the fallen folder, pretending to straighten papers that didn't need fixing. You should go, she said softly, before it gets worse. But when I reached for the door, she spoke again, voice shaking, but certain. If you walk out now, it's over. I froze. And if I stay? Her eyes lifted, meeting mine, the tiniest tear tracing down her cheek. Then everything I've been afraid of starts again. We stood there, caught in the space between logic and longing, both knowing this was the room felt smaller than ever, too quiet, too full of everything we hadn't said. She stood by the window, one hand resting against the frame, the other clutching her own wrist as if to keep from shaking. Outside, rain whispered against the glass, soft and relentless. I told you to leave, she said. Not angry, tired. Like she'd already fought herself 100 times before this moment. I tried, I said. But I keep ending up here. She turned slowly. Her eyes found mine, and for a second, the air shifted, heavy, trembling. We were both caught in it, the same pull neither of us wanted to name. You don't know what this would cost, she whispered. Maybe not, I said, stepping closer. But I know what it feels like to walk away. And I can't do it again. Her breath caught, barely audible. I could see the conflict flicker across her face. Want, fear, memory. You think this is simple? No, I said. That's why it matters. She let out a shaky laugh, the kind people make when they've run out of defenses. You shouldn't say things like that. Then stop standing so close. Her silence was an answer. When she turned her head slightly, her face was only inches from mine. I could see the tiny raindrop that had clung to her hair, the faint line of her jaw tense beneath the dim light. You're too young to understand what losing everything feels like, she said. Maybe, I murmured, but I know what it's like to feel nothing. Until now. Her eyes softened, that one flicker of truth breaking through all the fear. Her hand lifted, barely touching my chest, then hesitated. I could feel the warmth of her palm without her even making contact. This isn't fair, she said. I know. And it's not right. I know that too. She finally looked up, her voice a whisper that barely held itself together. Then why are you still here? I swallowed hard. Because leaving would feel worse than being wrong. Her hand pressed flat against me now, trembling. My breath caught, and for a moment, everything outside that small circle of space disappeared. No past, no rules, no noise. Just the fragile quiet of two people trying not to fall apart. If we do this, she said softly, there's no going back. Then maybe we stop pretending we want to. The space between us vanished, almost. Her forehead brushed mine, her breath warm, uneven. Every heartbeat felt too loud. Too close. Too real. And then she pulled back just enough to meet my eyes. There was no fear left there, only recognition, like she finally saw me, fully, without resistance. "We both know what this means now," she said. "I do." Her lips parted, half a word, half a promise, before she whispered, "Then don't let go." And for the first time, either of us did. The morning light spilled through the curtains, soft and golden, settling on the quiet mess we'd left behind. 2 untouched mugs of coffee, a blanket half fallen to the floor, a silence that finally didn't feel like a wall between us. She sat at the edge of the couch, legs folded under her, tracing the rim of her cup with her finger. I watched her for a long time, the way her shoulders finally looked at ease, the small crease between her brows gone. It felt strange, peaceful, but unfamiliar. "You should probably be getting used to leaving by now," she said quietly, a ghost of a smile tugging at her lips. "Maybe I'm tired of leaving," I said. She looked up then, her eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. "That's dangerous talk. I think we've both lived through worse." For a moment, she didn't reply. Her gaze drifted toward the window. The soft rain had stopped, the world outside still wet, glistening. When she finally spoke, her voice was low. "You know, I kept telling myself this was wrong. Every night. Every time you looked at me like that. I kept thinking it would be easier to pretend. And now?" I asked. She breathed out slowly, her thumb brushing against her lip, a habit she didn't seem to notice. "Now it's harder to lie." That simple truth hung between us. No dramatic confessions, no promises. Just honesty, quiet and imperfect. I moved closer, not to pull her in, but to let her know I wasn't leaving. The space between us had always been more about fear than distance. She reached for my hand before I could even decide what to do. Her fingers slipped into mine, hesitant, searching, and when they finally settled, I felt something loosen in my chest. Her thumb moved in small circles against my skin. "This isn't how I pictured things," she said. "I know. But I don't want to picture it any other way anymore." The room felt warmer now, the kind of warmth that didn't come from sunlight but from something steadier, something that had stopped running. She leaned into me, resting her head against my shoulder. I could smell the faint trace of her perfume, familiar now, grounding. My arm moved around her without thinking, pulling her a little closer. "Maybe this doesn't have to make sense to anyone else," I said. She smiled against my shoulder. "It won't. I can live with that." Her laugh, soft, genuine, the one that started everything, filled the room again. Except this time, it didn't echo against silence. It settled inside it. After a while, she tilted her face up toward mine. "So, what now?" I thought about all the nights that had led to this, the hesitation, the guilt, the unspoken words. And then I just said the only thing that felt right. "Now we stop pretending it's temporary." She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her hand tightened around mine, her eyes held steady, and for once, there was no running, no hiding, just the quiet relief of finally being understood. And in that small, sunlit room, nothing else mattered. "Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?" Barely above a breath. "Don't make me want this." Her voice trembled. And I didn't answer, I couldn't. Because the truth was, I already had.